Hello there, this is Cenerus. This video will be the introduction of a new Let's Play style series of Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley is an amazing game that is clearly meant to criticize the commodification of labor, the alienation inherent to a society of stratified social classes, and the very foundations of capitalism itself. While doing a little preparation and research for this series, I encountered a lot of incoherent articles and Reddit comments about how the game isn't anti-capitalist at all, it's just critical of corporate capitalism and crony capitalism, as if capitalism doesn't naturally lead to cronyism and corrupt corporations commodifying everything, including the very lives of the workers upholding it. I've even encountered a few claims that the game is anarcho-capitalist in nature. Anarcho-capitalism is such an incoherent mess of an ideology that I won't dignify that with a response. There's a lot of misunderstanding surrounding the message of the game, and I'd like to set the record straight in this series. First off, a lot of the discussion about this game starts off on the wrong foot with regard to what capitalism is. Capitalism is not a synonym for commerce. Commerce is just trading stuff. Capitalism requires wage labor, private property rights protected by a state, a market economy, and a scarcity-based price system. Commerce has existed for almost as long as human beings as we recognize them today, over 100,000 years ago. Capitalism has only existed since the end of feudalism, about 500 years ago. Commerce will exist as long as humans exist, while capitalism will only exist for a few more generations, either because we move on to a more enlightened economic system, or because it will get us all killed due to its inability to deal with climate change and/or nuclear war. I point all this out because a lot of the analysis of the game that I've seen considers the buying and selling of seeds and vegetables to Pierre or Joja Mart, the villagers owning homes and having jobs, and the end goal of having a large profitable farm as all features of capitalism, when in reality almost all the features of capitalism are actually missing. In fact, Pelican Town much more resembles an anarchist commune than a small American farming town. The main reasons for this are the lack of state ruling Stardew Valley, the lack of unjustified hierarchy within the town, the social ownership of property rather than private ownership, and the use of direct action and mutual aid to solve social ills rather than ignoring them or hoping the free market fixes them somehow. First off, there isn't much to suggest there is a state that Stardew Valley is a part of. There are no police or bureaucrats enforcing laws to uphold some sort of class hierarchy. There isn't really any sort of hierarchy at all. You have Mayor Lewis, who presumably handles minor administrative tasks for Pelican Town, but he spends most of his time hanging out in various shops, tending to his small garden, or just standing around in town. This is opposed to what mayors do in capitalist towns, mainly accepting bribes from business interests, getting involved in sex or corruption scandals, and defending the police for letting another mass shooting happen. Lewis mentions gathering taxes occasionally, so that is probably part of what he does when he is visiting local shops, and those funds are used to put on holiday celebrations, maintain basic infrastructure like the roads and streetlights, as well as keep the community center going. Lewis is a good example to explain the anarchist concept of unjustified hierarchy. Anarchism is often thought as the rejection of all authority, government, laws, etc., but this is a caricature of what anarchism is really about, mainly promoted by high school history teachers, conservative media personalities, and a very small subsection of terminally online anarchists that take it a step further, rejecting homework and bedtimes as well. Mainstream anarchist thought certainly questions all forms of authority and hierarchy, but distinguishes between justified forms of authority and hierarchy and unjustified forms. Examples of unjustified hierarchy include police officers who get a gun, a license to kill, and no accountability, or a member of Congress who can do as much insider trading as they wish, accept as many bribes from corporations as they wish, and cannot be recalled by their constituents. Examples of justified hierarchy could include a ship captain whose directives may need to be carried out quickly with no time for discussion, or a political representative elected through direct democracy who can be recalled by the people, or whose vote in a representative body could be bypassed through a sort of liquid democracy system. Lewis seems much closer to the latter type of politician than the former, and the people seem to approve of his execution of his duties. He doesn't have any sort of real authority or class or social privilege over the rest of the community. He's just another worker whose job it is to handle the day-to-day management of the town. Besides Mayor Lewis, you have the governor, but his job only consists of being the official soup taste tester, so he's not really relevant. On the topic of lack of hierarchy, it is worth mentioning the one exception in Pelican Town, which is of course Joja Mart. Joja Mart is run in the traditional capitalist sense, with wage laborers like Shane selling their products for a profit, stealing their excess value from them, and giving them no stake in the business. The store is run by Morris, who is presented as a greedy bootlicking middle manager. He wants to run Pierre out of business with his ruthless undercutting. He is distinctly absent from the community, which he clearly doesn't care about, and he is one of only 2 people in the town who defend private property. The other one is the goblin protecting the witch's hut, who has to be bribed with void mayonnaise for you to gain access. With the only 2 depictions of people in favor of private property being a greedy Walmart manager that no one likes and a literal goblin security guard, it should be clear what the game's creator thinks of capitalism. Besides Joja Mart, all the property in Pelican Town is owned communally and occupied by the people who use it. This is how most anarchist thinkers have envisioned property working in an anarchist society, with both Proudhon and Kropotkin, the grandfathers of mutualism and anarcho-communism respectively, having written about it. To paraphrase Kropotkin in The Conquest of Bread, everyone participates and contributes to society, and so everything should be owned by society as a whole so that everyone's well-being is met. Everyone in Pelican Town has all their needs met. There is no homelessness and no one goes hungry. If you're familiar with the game, then you may be thinking, what about Linus? He lives in a shack, his clothes are little more than tattered rags, and he has to dumpster dive for food. Well, as you complete his heart events and get to know him better, he makes it clear that he chooses to live somewhat apart from society due to past events that have made him distrustful of people. In a capitalist town, Linus would likely have his shack and his belongings taken away and destroyed, and he would probably be arrested and put in jail. But in Pelican Town, most people respect him even if they don't understand him, and they are more than willing to help him out. When Gus hears him rummaging around the dumpster outside the saloon for food, he doesn't call the pigs or get angry. Instead, he tells Linus that he doesn't want anyone to go hungry and gives him some hot, fresh food. In a later event, Robin, who is a well-meaning liberal, offers to build a house for Linus if you invite him to live on your farm. He makes it clear that although he appreciates the kind offer, he chooses to live this way. He prefers being alone and living a Walden-esque lifestyle and feels the villagers trying to help him is kind, but he would prefer if they let him live his life the way he wants. Self-determinism is an important value for all left-wing ideologies, and anarchism is no exception, and so the villagers are of course happy with Linus's decisions and treat him like a member of the community. The treatment of Linus is also a good example of the direct action and mutual aid I mentioned earlier. The neoliberal market solution to homelessness is to criminalize homelessness or ignore it, but the villagers would never let someone go hungry or have no shelter just because they have no money. Lastly, Pelican Town lacks the scarcity-based economy required by capitalism. The town has a post-scarcity economy before you as the farmer show up to provide the town with even more abundance. None of the villagers need to work jobs to have their needs met, and those that do work jobs seem to do so more out of having something to do than because they need to do so they don't starve. This happens in real life just as it does in Stardew Valley. Plenty of people in the workforce work just because they find their jobs fulfilling or get bored without having a day-to-day schedule, despite not needing the money due to savings or a partner that makes enough money for both of them. In Pelican Town, the only people with full-time jobs are Harvey, Pierre, Clint, Willie, and Emily, who all work at the local stores, the doctor's office, or the saloon. Essential workers, in other words. Sebastian, Maru, and Penny work part-time jobs as a programmer, a doctor's assistant, and a babysitter respectively. Marnie and Robin have jobs, but they work whenever they feel like it, often taking the day off because they just aren't feeling it. The entire rest of the town is just hanging out and vibing all day. Shane even quits his job after the community center is finished, which implies that either the community center further solidifies the post-scarcity economy of the town, or that he only had the job to afford his drinking habit, which he loses due to developing a closer relationship with his family and friends and getting a therapist, which he notably has access to despite having no job. Another interesting indication that the economic system in Pelican Town is not a capitalist one is how the currency system works. In a capitalist scarcity-based system, the prices of goods fluctuate based on availability. You would expect the prices of a melon, for example, which only grows during the summer, to be higher during the winter than when it is in season. But in Stardew Valley, the prices of everything is fixed. This means that either the taxes Lewis collects for the town treasury are used for price controls and stabilization, as has been done in socialist countries in real life, or more likely, the currency is not a currency in the capitalist sense at all, but more like labor vouchers. The basic idea behind labor vouchers is that they represent the amount of labor put in to produce a product and can be exchanged for other goods. A linen coat may take X number of hours to produce and thereby be worth 1,000 labor credits and could be exchanged for 4 of the aforementioned melons, which cost 250 credits each due to the labor it took to grow them. This is an old-school socialist idea going back to the earliest thinkers like Owen and Proudhon that has somewhat fallen out of style, but who is to say how socialism and anarchist theory would have developed in the world of Stardew Valley? To learn more about how this system would work, check out my upcoming collaboration with the channel Re-Education, which discusses mutualism in much much greater detail, so I hope I have done a good job explaining how Pelican Town more closely resembles an anarchist commune than a capitalist town. Now I'd like to lay out the victory conditions for the playthrough. The most important goal is to drive out the capitalist Joja Corporation from the town. The farmer is never allowed to shop at Joja Mart or help them in any way. They are unwelcome in the town and interfere with how the villagers would like to live in accordance with their anarchist values. To do this, the community center should be finished as soon as possible. Second, one of the main reasons the farmer you play as left their old life behind was to have more of a sense of community and feel less alienated from their labor. To this end, being a part of the community is very important. The farmer must reach at least 4 hearts with all villagers to signify being at least on a friendly basis with everyone. The farmer must reach 8 hearts with at least 6 people to signify having a close group of comrades you can rely on and that can rely on you. Marriage is optional, but if the farmer does get married, they must max out hearts with their spouse. As for who counts as a villager, I'm going to consider everyone who lives in Pelican Town a villager, so that includes villagers you don't have access to at first, such as Dwarf, Kent, and Krobus. So the only people not necessary to befriend are Sandy and Leo, who live in the desert in Volcano Island. Besides the end goals of kicking out the capitalist and being a good member of the community, there are several guidelines the farmer must follow. The community events and holidays should be participated in whenever possible. The farmer should help out community members with mutual aid whenever they need help. Lastly, the farmer themselves should focus on what people in the community want and need, rather than what is most profitable. Like many Stardew Valley players, several of my playthroughs have been about rushing as many kegs as possible as early as possible so you can get rich from an artisan wine farm. I'm going to focus more on things that I like to eat and drink, and I assume the villagers would too, so expect more beer, cheese, fruit, and hot sauce than just a huge field of star fruit and 10 shacks filled with kegs. Let me know in the comments if you have any ideas or recommendations that would make an anarchist playthrough of Stardew Valley more interesting or authentic. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Peace.